Hi and welcome everybody to the Endo Fertility podcast, where you will be empowered to learn how to thrive and conceive with endometriosis. If you want to understand more about your endo, how this can affect your fertility, and how you can personally take action to optimise your health and life, then this is the place for you. I'm your host, Dr. Lizzie Alexander, the Endo Fertility Specialist, and I'm a marine biologist turned integrative nutrition and health coach and holistic massage therapist. Most importantly, I know what it's like to have chronic fatigue, endo, and struggle with fertility. I am now a super busy yet thriving wife, business owner, and mother of a gorgeous little boy. Join me every Wednesday as I jump into topics that will support and guide your healing and fertility journey, from health and nutrition, lifestyle, emotional and spiritual support, and much more. So sit back, relax, and enjoy listening. This episode is brought to you by my Endo Fertility Resource Library. Inside the library, you'll discover the free resource hub with 3 great downloadable products to get you started. An ebook called 5 Ways to Start Dropping Your Pain and Optimise Your Fertility. A short guide to sperm health, great for getting your man started on improving his own health. And an infographic with 88 things I did to get pregnant. Make sure to check out the show notes for the link. Welcome to episode 36. Today I'm sharing an interview that I did back in April with an amazing woman called Molly Nichols. I first came across Molly when I did Nicole Jardim's Fix Your Period apprenticeship back in 2019. And she was Nicole's business partner, as she is a women's empowerment coach, a business mentor, as well as a healer and a fertility coach. Now, I took to Molly the first time I listened to her in our group coaching sessions. She is so present. She has such an amazing personality, and every word she says is just awe-inspiring. Furthermore, her personal struggles with fertility give her authenticity and empathy to all the women that she helps. I've since done a few of Molly's online courses for my own personal fertility journey, and I love her work, that I wanted to bring her on the podcast as a guest because I just wanted to share what she does with you. So a little bit more about her. Molly Nichols is a mama of 4, business mentor for soulful entrepreneurs, renowned for fertility coach, healer, and queen of guided visualizations. Her unique approach to using guided visualizations, positive psychology, energy healing, and spiritual practices, paired with the proven sacred fertility and soulful business strategies, support her clients worldwide in calling in and receiving all that they desire in life, family, and business. So I hope you have a cuppa and you're sitting comfortably. Now go and enjoy the interview. Hi, Molly. It's wonderful to have you on the podcast. I'm so excited and honoured to have you here today to chat about journaling for fertility.
Thank you so much for having me. I am so excited and honored to be here, and I have so much to share.
Molly, it would be great if you could tell us a little bit about your own fertility journey. Being a type A personality, I know, and a perfectionist. These are both traits actually that many women with endo have, and I know I've got them. How did you find this affected your fertility journey? And then how did this shape your career going on to become a healer and fertility coach and business mentor, in fact?
Yes. So I like to say that I am a recovering perfectionist. It's been something I've been working on for such a long time. But in reference to, my fertility journey, so for me, back it up from the very beginning, I never had any real career goals. I was never like, when I get older, grow up, this is what I'm going to be. I just had one thing. I just wanted to be a mom. And when I was in my early 20s, I moved from Michigan to California with no plan, like $800 in my pocket. And literally 2 weeks after I got there, I met the man who would become my husband. And we met in September. We moved in together in March. And then 2 years later, we were married. But from the beginning, the plan was always if we got pregnant, that would totally be okay. Even if it was before we were married, I wanted to have a baby. And I remember moments of just having baby on the brain. It was all I could think about, baby, 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 baby. But, it didn't happen as quickly as I had hoped or thought that it would. And it actually took 7 years before I would finally become pregnant. And I got a career and, 10 years in the luxury health and wellness industry and hospitality. And all along, it was like the intention was, okay, I'm going to work and work and work. But once I get pregnant, like I'm done, like I'm out of here. I'm going to be a stay-at-home mom. That was always the plan. And what would happen throughout my journey, though, is that something like where I would have a negative, would have like a negative IUI, or I would be working up to go and have tests taken. And then I wouldn't go back to the doctor for like years. And we would just keep trying naturally. So there was this up and down thing that was happening constantly. And then when I was in those moments of down, I would immerse myself in my work. And that's where a lot of the type A of okay, I'm just going to put all my focus and energy here. But on the other end, when I was really in it and we were really trying, it was like the doing, what are all the things that I can do? And I have to get it right. And we know those things, just checking things off the list. And never and all the time did any of the doctors or any of the people I was around, they were never what's going on in your internal landscape? What's going on inside of you? What are you thinking? What are you feeling? What's your internal experience? It was all about the outward experience. So it wasn't about who I was being during, all that time. It was all about the doing, do this, do this. And what I found is a lot of times when we're, taking all the supplements or eating the healthy diet or even going to yoga or doing some of these things, there's still things that we're doing in motion that seem to be a lot easier than going into that internal landscape to go, okay, what really is going on inside of you? And I had met this woman and she kind of questioned that for me. She was like, do you actually believe you're going to become pregnant? Do you believe you're going to be a mom? And when I share this part of my story, she was not saying because you didn't believe you're not having a baby or you're not getting pregnant. She was just going, again, what's that conversation you're having with yourself? What is that belief system? What is that place that you're operating from? And I went within myself and was like, oh my gosh, I've never in my entire 7-year journey had seen myself pregnant in my mind. I'd always seen the positive pregnancy test, but had never seen, I just wanted to say I was pregnant. But so when I went within and started visualizing myself pregnant and just being in that energy and that essence of pregnancy, something clicked. And I, for the first time in my entire life, really knew that someday, somehow I'd be a mom. And so after 7 years, you think maybe it'll never happen. You're looking at all these other things. You've tried everything, right? You've done all the things. And so you're spending all this time in your mind researching and trying to find that perfect thing that's going to be the thing that's going to, allow you to finally become pregnant. And so I was guided to IVF. I became, and this is a fast forward story, I became pregnant with twins. And through that process of becoming pregnant with my twins and using visualization and understanding the mind-body connection and going within and really seeing one of my beliefs was you can have some things, but you can't have others. I have this amazing husband. We have this amazing relationship, but then you can't have a baby. So there was a lot of worthiness. Oh, am I worthy to be a mother? I see all these other people around me getting pregnant, but why, when I have a really beautiful life I could share, am I not getting pregnant? And so really saying I'm worthy of pregnancy, I'm worthy of motherhood as well. So really working on that internal game while you're also doing the things in the physical. So I became pregnant with twins, and that opened up this whole other world for me where I was like, okay, I now need to share this with every single person every woman struggling to really understand that our bodies have the capacity to heal. They have the capacity, we're born with a life portal in our bodies, but yet throughout, when we're little girls, no one tells us that. No one tells us how to really understand our menstrual cycles. No one tells us, it's all about not becoming pregnant, right? So I went on this journey to figure out how to get my work into the hands, how to get my visualizations into the hands of anyone who needed them. And I found that what worked for me also worked for countless other women. And in that process of sharing my work, I got pregnant again, but naturally with my daughter, Tilly. So I've my twins, Birdie and Brooks, my daughter, Tilly, who was born 2 years later. And then fast forward 7 years from the birth of Tilly, I found out by surprise that I was pregnant again from natural conception at 41 years old. And and this is the piece around trying to get all the, trying to get everything perfect, like that mindset of like, if I get it perfect, if I do all the things, then I'll get my baby. Well, fast forward my life when I became pregnant in my 40s, it was a mess. It was an absolute mess. My relationship with my husband wasn't great. We're moving, but I was still doing all the inner work. I was still doing my inner process. I was doing a ton of fertility visualizations with my clients. I was doing tons of programs. And it was, and so this beautiful little soul wanted to come through, and she loves life. And after 2 C-sections with my first 2 pregnancies, the third pregnancy, I actually had a home birth. And
wow.
Yeah. And I think that was part of her journey too. So from a woman struggling for 7 years to become pregnant, never knew if I'd be a mom, today, I stand before you as a mom of 4. So yeah. And I've really looked at, you asked the question about the type A and the perfectionism. And when we begin to look below the surface and we say, what's driving that behavior? What's driving that thought process of having to do and get it right and control? With so much freedom comes about when we get to the deeper root to that and go, okay, well, that helps us feel safe. And so that was what that did. It helped me feel like I was in control. It helped me feel like I was safe. But when we begin to remind ourselves that we're always safe, we're always taken care of, we're always being supported, we can kind of put some of that stuff down and know that like magic and beauty is working in our lives all the time. But when we're so hyper focused on the control and the doing and getting it right, we're in, hyper focused, and we may not see some of the stuff that's going on around us. So yeah, so that brought me to where I am today, and sharing my fertility work with the world, as well as beginning to share some of the process and the tools and the strategies that I used in order to build my business to get it to the thousands of women that it supports today.
Thank you, Molly. That was an amazing recap of obviously quite a long journey that you went through. And I know it was a bit of a whistle-stop tour, but we have got lots of other great questions. But there was so much there that I could, go back and ask questions. But I think one of them was really interesting when you said that when the lady that you came across and asked you the question of, you don't think that you could actually get pregnant. And I think that's a really poignant point to make. And I think a lot of women, whether they've got endo, adeno, PCOS, or any other sort of fertility challenge, that you often think this. And I know for me, and I remember, because I was doing a fertility coaching course, and she was using, I think it was NFP, and she'd asked me the question, are you able to visualize you being pregnant? And I realized I couldn't. I literally, it was so difficult. I'd known, like you, that I'd always wanted to be a mother. And I'd known from a very young age, early 20s, that I was going to have a problem. I didn't know why at that point. But when it came to visualizing it, it took a lot of work. That took a lot of work. And I remember just days and days, and I was like, I just can't imagine. And it was then pulling apart what was going on in my head. And I had these, slightly different personalities within me. I had sort of, fun Lizzie who wanted to carry on just being single and not having any responsibility. And then there was a fear in me. And it was interesting exploring all of that, to be able to then to find what I was scared about, to then be able to visualize what I actually really wanted, but what was preventing me from visualizing it.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so true, right? So there's part of us that won't want to visualize it because I don't even like to use the word block, because then it feels like we're resisting something, but where there are all these different aspects of ourselves. And I think one of the things that we don't talk about a lot is the transition that women do go through when they go from not having children to having children. I think the other thing with visualization that we get lost in is like when we feel like we have to try to do something, what I find is the more you try to focus on making it happen, the harder it gets to be able to see it. So it's almost like that resistance. So a lot of times, even in the work that I do, like I'll have women be like, okay, I can't see this. And so we'll just talk it out, because our minds see in pictures and images. And so when we have a thought about something, when we have an idea about something, when we have a belief about something, our imagination is creating pictures in our minds, whether we're conscious of that or not. So even with the women who are listening in regards to having endo or any other fertility issues or issues or problems that you're having, how do you see your womb in your mind? How do you see your ovaries? How do you see your fallopian tubes? We have a picture in our mind or an energy or an image attached to that. So it's really interesting to go into, and that's where I even say in the beginning, like if you can't get all the way to pregnancy, just start with bringing your focus and energy to your womb and bringing love and light and just beginning to like build that relationship with your body, with your womb, with your entire reproductive system, because we're not taught to have that connection from the very beginning. And then you can go through maybe even seeing conception happening and then seeing pregnancy happening and then seeing your life with your children. But it's very interesting where we do have those things where we have to slow down. And this is exactly what you did, which is so amazing and beautiful. And the same thing I did is you have to pause. And you have to look within and you have to go, okay, from a loving, curious, conscious place, what is it that I actually think and believe? And where is that place I'm operating from? But this is where I think is like the hardest work for many of us, because to slow down, to be still, to go within feels really uncomfortable. And I remember for me, like, as I said, so used to the doing, so used to the going. The first time I ever put my headphones in just to be still and meditate, like I remember this woman had given me like this thing. It was like just rain to listen to. And I couldn't even close my eyes. I was like scared to close my eyes, which feels so, kind of silly, but I couldn't even be with myself. So that's one of the first things that I always recommend is like, just begin looking at slowing down. Where are you running in your life? Where are you trying to outrun or outdo? So just beginning the process of slowing down to go, where am I at? What does my body need? What does my spirit need? And beginning that dialogue. So it's interesting, and it does bring about where you go, oh, wow, that's really interesting. And then you don't have to be held hostage by whatever you think or whatever comes up. You get to go, okay, what else could I choose here? What else could I step into here? What else could I feel here? Is this even what I believe true? So yeah, such good stuff.
Thank you. And I love that. I love what you've just said there, that it is a great place to start by just the small things, not necessarily going in for the full, you're pregnant or meeting your spirit child. It's starting to be just with yourself. And I think many women many people, never mind women, but many people struggle to do that. And I know for me personally, when I was younger, I always had to be around people all the time, like all the time. I could never be on my own. Like the idea of being on my own, I found scary. I don't know whether that was because you're scared of your thoughts. You know what I mean? So like you said, having that step of being on your own and being open to your thoughts as a first step is really, really helpful. Because I think as well, if you're that type A, and I'm not saying everybody with endo, certainly not, and not that type at all, but sometimes when you want to control things, and you are able to with nutrition, with other things you can control, whereas it's really difficult to control your thoughts, isn't it? It's really difficult to have that control, but also to let go of that control, to let go and to be open-minded to see whatever you are going to see. Because I know I became a Reiki practitioner, and I knew that I wanted to do it because it was part of my fertility journey. I thought I want to learn how to be able to use healing energy on myself. But I remember when I went to it, and it was the same with, very close connection with a visualization. I just couldn't open my mind. I was just so, is it skeptical? And I've had that with some clients where they're skeptical. And, when I've said about journaling or visualization, and to start with, and I was like, do you think it's a bit woo woo? And they're like, yes. and we have to work through that and go like, maybe just try what, and they come back, they're like, oh my God, I've tried it and it's amazing. It's amazing how just having that time by yourself, you can explore things that you never have taken the time
to do before.
Yes. And I think the piece that is so beautiful here is that it's okay to be skeptical. You should be skeptical. We shouldn't just be open to taking on anything that anyone tells us. But there's a difference from a place of like intuition, like, okay, this kind of, I don't understand it. It feels a little out there, but it feels right. So, I think that skeptical or being curious about it. Curiosity is a word I use a lot in my work as well, to go, even when you have the thoughts come up, you just go, wow, that's interesting. Isn't that interesting? Because the controlling of the thoughts, when you were saying that, what I felt was this idea of like, you're in this constant battle with yourself of like what you should be doing, what you shouldn't be doing, what you should be thinking, what you shouldn't be thinking. Mm-hmm. The toxic positivity is like it drives me crazy because, we hear all these things around manifestation, or like, if you want a life like this, or if you want this, like you have to be in this perfect mindset all the time, and you can't feel this, and you can't have fear, and you just need to be positive. And so there's all these women walking around trying to force themselves to be positive and not feeling any of the human emotions that we're born with, that are part of our life experience. So if we can learn to embrace our emotional experience, so our emotions can flow through us. But I think a lot of times we're afraid of, if we sit with it, what's actually going to come to the surface. And that feels very dangerous. And I think even in regards to endo, it's like, it can also feel like we're in this battle with our bodies, like that we're in a like a fight with them, and because of the pain and the discomfort and all that comes, the physicalness that comes with endo. So it's looking at and beginning that internal dialogue with yourself to go, okay, like, what actually do I feel around my experience, around what I'm experiencing in my body right now? Instead of trying to outrun it or trying to shove it and make it go away, it's like, what is my body actually trying to share with me? And am I listening? And again, it goes to that place of like slowing down to tune within, to go, okay, what's going on? And with the visualization, it's so interesting that people say that visualization feels like it's something that's so woo-woo, when again, we're visualizing all the time. And so sometimes another tool that I use, like when we talk about, like when you feel like you can't visualize something, if you just talk it like it's real, your mind will begin to automatically create pictures around it. Because that's how we see, that's how our mind, and even when we daydream, we're kind of in that place of meditation. But I think we have these ideas of like meditation or energy healing, like meditation, you have to be quiet all the time, and like your mind's going to stop. Like my mind never stops. It's always going. So, that's why I love guided visualizations too. I also wanted to share, when I was doing my Reiki, when I was going through my Reiki training as well, it took her 2 times, like you have the anointment, or I can't remember what it's called, but and she had to come to me also because I was so controlled. I didn't want her in my energy. I was like, what are you doing? And like, it felt like this is like, so I question all that stuff as well. She had to come through. She's like, wow, you're, cause I was like, what are you doing? Like there was a part of it specifically also for my heavy religious background.
Yes.
There was part of me that was like, what if this feels a little off, but it ended up being fantastic. But it took a couple times for me to trust that and allow that as well.
Yeah. And that's totally how I was. So it's interesting. And because you have different points of view, and you're kind of like, where's this coming from? And yeah, going back to the power of visualizations, that was interesting that you said you can just talk what you think. And it can be easier. Whereas I suppose for me, actually, I would have said that I'd find that harder to talk it than think it, because think it is almost less, do you know what I mean? It's less out there than actually talking about it. But for some people, they might find it easier than thinking of in pictures.
Yeah. So if you were to say, what would my life look like if I was, or because with visualization, to like turn it into a superpower, it's like, not only what do you see, but what do you feel? And so when you say like, okay, if I were like, what would I, and just asking the questions, like in a space of wonder and curiosity, right? Like, I wonder what I will look like when I'm pregnant. I wonder what type of clothes that I'll wear. I wonder what the softness of like a sundress would feel and look like over my belly. I wonder what it will feel like to hold my baby's arm or my toddler's hand and for us to walk through the park together or to push them on a swing. I wonder what it will feel like, what that moment will be like when I hold the pregnancy test in my hand and I see it says pregnant or the two lines. So as we say that, and I say those because it's very specific, can you see like the pregnancy test with, the word pregnant on it? Or you can feel the texture of the dress. So those are the things in my work, like really making it so it's not so more specific. So it doesn't feel so vague around like, okay, well, visualize yourself pregnant. It's like, okay, well, where am I?
Yeah.
Where am I? Where do I go? Like, am I in my bed? Like one of my favorites are like, just think about yourself, like waking up in the morning, one morning, and you have this big, beautiful belly. The sun is shining in your bedroom and you just feel the warmth of the sun on your skin. And you like just put your hands over your belly and you just feel that big round belly. And then you feel that little twinge in there, that little kick, that little movement. And so those little things that you say, it's just like very specific that they can, and then maybe your partner is right there next to you and they kiss you on your forehead or wrap their arm around you, or they put their hand on your belly. And you see the smile on their face. So you just paint more of these pictures rather than it, again, being really vague.
Yeah. And that really helps having those prompts, I think, just like you said. And that's the difference between, say, open-ended visualization and say guided visualization, because there are different types of visualizations, aren't there?
Yes, absolutely.
So taking that visualization on, now I know there are lots of different, like I said, lots of different types of visualizations out there, particularly around fertility, but kind of just to apply it a little bit towards the endo, do you recommend that women with endo use visualizations to reduce pain and improve healing, for example, as a step maybe before they are thinking about fertility? Because quite often it's this, when I ask women, what are your thoughts about your reproductive area or your womb? And they're like, a hot, angry mess, everything's stuck together, this, that, and the other. And yeah, I feel like that's definitely a step first, is this trying to reduce this anger, this, believing in your womb and getting over that step of sort of being told that endo is has such a negative impact on your fertility.
Yes. Oh, such profound stuff. So absolutely. I would recommend like step one is like reintroducing yourself to your womb and your reproductive system. Like you would not believe how many women I've worked with where I was like, when was the last time you placed your hands on your belly? Just place your hands over your womb. And like really tuned in. And like you said, like that hot, angry mess, like what are the stories you have about your body, about your womb? What does your womb need? And I think visualization can absolutely help. And it doesn't even have to be a guided visualization in this instance, but it can just be simply placing your hands over your belly and sending love and sending light and bringing, because again, we're having that dialogue with our body. We're saying, we're like, when I tune in, this is what I see. This is what I feel. It's that warm, that hot energy. So you're already feeling something there. And I think it goes into that place where we're in that place of resistance against it. Like you just want it to go away. It makes you feel out of control. But there is a mental and emotional component to it. We are multidimensional beings. We're not just physical. We're mental, emotional, spiritual, energetic, and physical. And so all of those parts work together, I believe, in healing, and all those parts work together in becoming pregnant. And so I think like if it feels too out there or too scary or too vulnerable to go right into visualizing yourself pregnant, just visualize your womb as this beautiful open space filled with love and filled with light. And even when you're like, if you're having a flare up or you're, in your cycle and you're in a lot of pain, instead of even trying to force that to go away, just going into it and being like, what do you need? Because I feel like what can also happen is this place of disassociation because the pain is so bad. And to go into, okay, how can I stay connected here? What does my body need? What do I need to take care of myself? But I think as far as the visualization piece of like, can you have a daily practice of just visualizing your womb as this beautiful open space filled with love and filled with light, and even that light going in and just disintegrating, clearing, opening, just creating this warm space within you, but a warming from a gentle place instead of that harsh place. And this may also feel super abstract because you're like, but that's not what I feel. And it's like, okay, but when you're not experiencing pain, can you do it then? And just begin that process of like having a relationship with your body that maybe is in a place of love and empathy and compassion, rather than feeling like something that you have to survive or you have to fight or that you have to battle against. Because they tell us, there are all these stories about what is or isn't possible based on our diagnosis. And we get really attached, like the type A, the perfectionist part of us, we get attached to those numbers. We get attached to our diagnosis. We wear our diagnosis, and it becomes part of who we are. But like your endo or infertility or PCOS, like whatever it is, that's part of your experience, but is not who you are. Mm-hmm. It's not like it, but we wear it, we embody it, we own it, and to go, okay, this is part of my experience. It's part of what I'm going through, but it's not who I am.
And I love that, because I've heard you say that before, and I tell my clients that because I have learned that from you, and I think that's so true. Going back to sort of just going into and feeling when you've got that pain, just remembering an experience I had, and I just want to share it with the listeners. Actually, is years ago I used to fly quite a lot for my job because I used to live in the Middle East. And there were quite a few times where I was on the plane. I don't know why. Well, I do know why now. Stress and flying is a stressful thing, and stress can cause endo flare-ups, and it can cause flare-ups in pain and bloating. And I would always end up being bloated, that kind of like 6-9 month pregnant bloat. There's nothing you could do about it. And you're stuck on a plane and you haven't got anything there for it. You haven't got a hot water bottle. And I remember, and it was the first time I did this, and I can't remember where in my journey it was. It must have been after I started some sort of more inner work. And I remember just putting my hands on my tummy and thought, you know what, I'm just going to connect with it, close my eyes and just connect with my belly and just send some white light healing energy into it. And I think this is before I kind of explored the whole Reiki thing. And it was amazing. I just sat there and did this. And half an hour later, the bloat had gone. Where before, it didn't matter what I did and it couldn't go. And after that, I used that connection and just visualizing just calmness around my abdomen where it felt very bloated and painful. And that made a huge difference. And I know I didn't apply anything. I was obviously also calming my nervous system by making that connection, lots of things like that. But rather than sort of going, riling around going, I'm in massive pain and trying to fight it, which is what I'd previously have done.
Yes. And I think that is what we, especially when there's pain, right? We don't want to experience pain. So we want to, this is where I was saying before, that disassociation, but it's so interesting. The beautiful, fascinating part is that you went from the head, which you were usually using, right? Going into the mind, where you go into that, like that battle against yourself. I want this to go away, like into all the story around it. Because we can even have like, why is this happening to me? And then the anger, the frustration, like all this stuff came up, but you went into the body. And so, like you said, you engage your nervous system in a different way. You brought in the light. And when there is a flare up, that is energy. And so you're just working on your own energy. And this may work right away. It may not work, but you're beginning a practice from taking all that mental energy. And ladies, if we're type A and we're perfectionists and we love to think things, we're very comfortable in our minds. We are so comfortable up here. But it's like when you just begin to breathe into your body and you begin to breathe, you're essentially breathing life into your body, and you can have a different experience. But we get so attached to the stories around what people have told us, what we've experienced. And even in this moment, like, is there a different experience that you could have? And this is a lot of what I teach around the fertility journey, because a lot of it's this very similar to where they're just like, well, this is what it is. And you have to, you wear this diagnosis. It's going to be difficult for you. It's going to be hard for you. We put numbers on it, right? I mean, I've had so many clients where they were like, there's a 3% chance you're going to be able to become pregnant. And you're like, how do you know that?
Yeah.
How can you, just like that 3%. But that's such a powerful experience that you had. I'm so glad that you shared that. And it's like, when we go into the body, we begin to see that our body is always in communication with us as well. So even through the endo, like, what is your body trying to share with you? Or through my fertility journey, it was like my body was trying to share something with me that I also needed to slow down, because at the peak of my fertility journey, I was like working crazy. I was even going through IUIs and going through fertility treatments and working like 50 hours a week, nonstop, like so much stress, so much anxiety. And again, it was and I don't think you have to be in like this Zen place all the time, but having that even 10 minutes a day where you're just kind of have that quiet time can make all the difference.
No, and I completely agree with that. Completely agree. Even if it's just a few minutes here or there, you can break it up, just to go into your body makes the world of difference, because we can't always control the stress around us. Although, as you said, I think sometimes our bodies are telling us things and we need to listen to them. So this kind of leads into something, someone I really like actually is Louise Hay, and all her books in terms of connecting our mind and our body. I mean, what are your thoughts on how our physical ailments are manifestations of our thoughts? It's interesting. She states that endometriosis, this is her view, obviously, is to do with blame. Is when you're not taking responsibility for things, which is quite interesting. But it's things in your mind, how you're thinking. I mean, I don't want to sort of totally unravel that, but it's just more about those connections. About, you can have thoughts and then your body's just trying to tell you that something's going on. So it's about listening to what's going on in your body physically and connecting with your body. I'm not quite sure where I was going with that.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think here is our body. Let me see how. This is why it's like which she's sharing is like, in essence, the mind body connection, right? So our thoughts create feelings, and our feelings create sensations within our bodies, right?
Yeah.
And for the majority of women, a lot of women, unless you grew up in perhaps a very healthy emotional home, we have been kind of programmed to like not be angry, not show frustration, to be nice, to like that. There are certain emotions that are good and certain emotions that are bad. So for a lot of us, when those emotions that we perceived were negative or wrong, this is where I was kind of saying about the toxic positivity, we go into this place of suppression. So we suppress our emotional experiences. And when you think about a traumatic moment that you had in your life, how you hold your breath in that moment, there's like that shock that happens. And it can even be something like you slam on the brakes in your car. It's like you have that moment where you hold your breath and there's that moment of shock, right? If we continue to swallow our emotions, if we continue to try to outrun our emotional experience, this happens a lot, even with miscarriage. It's like, okay, we just had this extremely painful, traumatic, highly emotional experience that happened in our lives. As women, we had all the hormones that went along with it, but then I'm just going to push it down and I'm going to keep going. And so we don't allow ourselves the space to process and feel our emotions. And when we do that, those emotions, can get lodged and stuck within our bodies. And I do believe that illness or other things, reproductive issues, whatever it might be, can definitely manifest through our emotional experience. But do I think it's one thing? No, I think it's multidimensional. But we look for that one thing, like, okay, if I can just get the nutrition piece, then I'm going to be okay. Or if I can just get the emotional piece or the spiritual piece, then I'm going to be okay. It's multidimensional. We need to be looking at who we are as human beings on a full spectrum level, because it's not just one thing. There's synergy between all of it. But I think what happens with the fertility journey and with endo or PCOS or, different reproductive issues that we have, we definitely go to, and society tells us it's the physical things that we need to do that are going to heal us. When I find a large percentage of the time, definitely by the time women get to me, the emotional piece, the mental and emotional piece is the piece that needs to be explored, because they've been doing all the other things. So if you're on your journey and you have been like feeling stuck, like, okay, I'm doing all the right things, but you're not doing the mental and emotional piece, the mental and emotional piece or spiritual piece definitely is a piece that I would look at, because it's the piece we resist the most, because we're not ever taught that that's where we should be putting our focus and energy. And I also don't like to, to say that it's all one thing, but our bodies are in constant communication with us, and we're in constant communication with our bodies, whether we're aware of it or not, through the stories we have, the thoughts we think, the way that we behave. And so many of us, definitely, I'll go back to the type A, the overthinker, we tend to spend the majority of our time in the upper portion of our bodies, from the solar plexus up. So sometimes it's just about getting back in our bodies. And that's where you had shared placing your hands over your belly and taking a couple deep breaths. In that moment, you're engaging your nervous system, and you're breathing life, you're breathing yourself, your spirit back into your body. So I definitely see that, but I think it's multidimensional. I would say there's like, in the realm of fertility, there's the trifecta. There's, the nutritional piece is important. The mental and emotional piece is important. And then the spiritual piece and connection with your baby is important. So yeah, I hope that answered your question.
No, it did. And I think you said it in a massively more articulated way than I actually asked the question. So thank you. That was really helpful. Now, and another amazing tool that you use is journaling. I've done your journaling course, and it is incredible. And I have to say, it really, really helped me. And I know that many women might say that they don't have time, that they don't think it will work, a bit like the sort of the visualizations. But I find that when I do, when I did do it, and I still do, that I love it. And also clients that I've introduced to, journaling, of course, there's different journaling, which would love to hear about from you, that they actually, it's really helped them. It's improved their mindset, again, to believe in their womb, to believe that their reproductives aren't actually broken. So maybe it'd be really good if you could explain more about creating that right mindset to open healing mentally, and how you can do that through journaling, basically.
Yes. Okay. So journaling is, so I feel like I came upon visualization, and that like blew my mind, the change and transformation that happened. And then I was introduced to journaling in a different way. So I had journaled affirmations and kind of dabbled in journaling for a really long time. But then there was this other type of journaling that I was introduced to, where it was just kind of that allowing that stream of consciousness almost to be freed from you. So when I'll share, so for me, when I first went, it was like began journaling in a different way, which was like that, just kind of letting it flow from me without it having to have a lot of structure. There were certain things, pieces to it, that like ending on a positive note and not judging it, because that's some of the reasons why we don't journal, is we're like, we want to get it perfect, or it has to be written in perfect handwriting. I've even had people who have been like, well, I've got these beautiful journals, but I don't really want to write them. Or do I have to read it back? Or if I write it down, is that going to manifest into reality? So yeah. So we're afraid to look at our fears. That goes back to the toxic positivity. If we actually look at our fears, they're going to manifest and come true. When in reality, if we don't look at our fears, they're running in the back of our minds all the time. So we need to get clear on our fears, so we know when we're operating from fear. So, but with journaling in general, I feel like when we have that very active mind, right, that we're thinking, the thoughts you thought yesterday are the same thoughts you're thinking today, and will be the same thoughts you think tomorrow, unless you do something to interrupt that thought process or to go deeper beneath it. And so a lot of us are more comfortable with talking, or we're comfortable with thinking, but when we put the pen to the paper, it allows us to access a deeper level of consciousness within us. And what I found was that I had this underlining vein of anxiety that was happening within me all the time that I wasn't even aware of, operating from that place of it like high anxiety. But I wouldn't have said that I was an anxious person. But as I look back and I began to unpack what was going on, like that feeling of not really being safe ever, but not knowing that that's like, if someone were to judge me or not like me, or, different things, that if I didn't get it perfect, what if I got something wrong? Were people in my business, my clients, my community going to be mad at me? But as I started to go deeper, it's like, well, why do I feel unsafe all the time? And in my journal, like some days I would just write, I'm safe, over and over and over again. But anyway, I'll go back to when we journal, the visual I like to give for this is like, if you're in a plane above water, like you see the ocean and you'll see the top of the ocean, and maybe you'll see a little bit of stuff like on the top of the ocean, you may see, different dolphins or different things moving around, but there's this entire other world underneath. So if you go down under the water, you see there's an entire new world underneath there that is ready to be explored. And that's what journaling gives us access to. It gives us access to this deeper level of consciousness, this deeper level of ourselves. And it helps us get below that repetitious thought process. It helps us get more into the subconscious mind to go, okay, where am I actually operating from? What do I actually think and believe? And so journaling can be used to write what you desire into reality, so you can feel it as you write the words on the page. But it can also be to process, like, where am I at today? And what am I feeling? And is what I'm feeling and believing actually true? So it allows that place of introspection within yourself to begin a dialogue with yourself on a deeper level, to see what's going on, as I say, underneath the surface. Also, when you put pen to paper, the other analogy I like to use is like, it's like draining the air from a tire. Like when you're so anxious about something and you're frustrated about it, or you're worrying about it, and you're just in that anxious energy, the moment you start to put pen to paper and just writing out what your experience, it doesn't need to be perfectly punctuated or in great handwriting. I mean, when I first started journaling, like unloading, just brain dumping constantly, it was pages and pages of that you wouldn't even be able to read back. Like, and it was like just a mess. But it is that unloading process. We don't even realize how much we have within us that we've been holding on to for such a long time. So it's a huge energetic release as well. So I really like to write what it is that you desire for yourself is a really great thing to do. Write how you want to feel each day, but also really working through some of that other stuff that, like, okay, I'm really in fear right now, or I'm really frustrated about this experience. What is this experience trying to show me? Or my body, I'm really frustrated with my body right now. I'm angry with my body right now. And just going into that and allowing that to be okay, instead of trying to force it to go away and be something different. Just that level of acceptance to go. And what I feel right now, even as I'm talking about this, it's like this energy that feels really tight and close to the body, that if you were to put pen to the paper and just give yourself permission to feel what it is, giving yourself permission to be okay with your experience and how you feel about it, without it having to be good, bad, right, or wrong, that it can just be your experience. And that in itself can be such an act of radical self-love, to be like, okay, look at how much I've been doing to take care of myself, and yet I'm still in pain. I'm frustrated about that. I'm pissed about that, but what can I continue to do to nourish myself, to take care of myself, to love myself, even though I feel this way? That can all happen in the journal.
Thank you. That was amazing. And again, I have got questions, some of which I've forgotten, some of which I haven't. I'm going to hold on to. I'm like, oh my God, there was so much there. You mentioned the word safe, which I've been holding on to that word safe, which I think is a really interesting word. Because actually it's something that I've been doing a lot about the nervous system, and it's that taking that into the physical side rather than the mental side. But if your body doesn't feel safe, then it's not going to feel safe enough to get pregnant. So it was interesting when you said, oh, you don't feel safe. And so many of us don't necessarily feel safe, but you don't realize that you don't. And it was like, identifying that actually you need your body to feel safe, because then it feels calm, it feels relaxed, it feels ready to get pregnant by just making sure it feels safe.
Absolutely. And we think about this idea of like, especially sensitive women, and I'm going to say like a lot of women, perhaps whether you're aware of it or not, who are listening, that may be deeply empathic. You can feel what other people are feeling, or you're energetically sensitive, or maybe you were called overly emotional or overly sensitive. And as women, we're naturally empathic. We naturally feel what other people feel. And with this idea of being safe, it's like going, the majority of the stuff that we have, I don't even like to call them issues, but like our mental and emotional stuff that we have as adults, they came online when we were children based on our experiences that we had when we were little. And so we go back to what was it when you were little that made you feel unsafe? And some of it can even be our birth experiences. And we also have to remember, even as children, and I think it's so much more now, but like how many times things as we were just exploring as toddlers were made to be really dangerous. And so sometimes it can be just like that we don't feel safe in our bodies because of we feel too much, or we don't feel safe in our bodies because of maybe the way we grew up and the way our home life was, where it was very energetically intense. So we learned to come out of our bodies. We learned to disassociate. So this is where it goes back to overthinking. We want to think ourselves into everything. And we want to we're constantly running because it feels dangerous to sit still. Because then we have to actually be with what's going on. And this idea of safe, of like, so a couple of years ago, I really kind of brought things down to a place of we either feel safe, or we either feel things feel safe or they feel dangerous. We want to be good, and we do not want to be perceived as bad. So we're in this constant battle with ourselves of like, am I good? Am I good? Or am I bad? Am I bad? Is this safe? Is this safe? Or is this dangerous? And things that might not really feel dangerous to us, we're actually as adults still experiencing them as dangerous. And so really, for me, it was going, where did I first take on that I wasn't safe? And it could be, growing up in a highly chaotic home. I'm the child of an alcoholic. My parents are divorced. So there was a lot of chaos, and I'm very sensitive. I'm deeply empathic, but I didn't know that about myself when I was little. I didn't know this about myself till I was like in my late 30s. I was like, oh, that all makes sense now. But going like, are you really sensitive? And have you been made wrong for that? Were you the one in your home taking on everyone else's energy, trying to fix everything? Looking at some of that stuff, like what was your experience energetically, emotionally as a child? And is that still showing up for you as an adult? And can you begin to unpack that and just say, you know what? I'm safe even if someone doesn't like me. I'm safe even if someone's upset with me. I'm safe in my body. I'm safe to be in the world. Even the language that we use right now based on what's happening in the world, how people are always saying, stay safe, stay safe, stay safe, which insinuates in some way that there's danger always around the corner. So we have to look at the impact that's had on our nervous systems to constantly be saying, stay safe, which insinuates that there's danger. And so we're in that hypersensitive, state of, fight or flight, or just high anxiety. So just it's almost like my prayer at times. It's just like, I'm safe. I want mine is like, it's safe to be seen. It's safe to be heard. It's safe to be me. That's one of my favorites.
That's lovely.
Yeah.
I like that. I might have to use that as a quote.
Yep. Safe to be seen. It's safe to be heard. It's safe to be me. And that knowing that we are always safe, we are always protected, we are always being taken care of. And how do we show up in life when we trust in that?
Thank you. Now, in terms of journaling, if someone wants to start journaling, should they just get a journal and just start writing actively, just open a book and write? Or are there, should they follow, guidance, do active journaling? I mean, you've got courses, haven't you, that you can do, online courses. Where would you start?
Okay. So the other thing I want to say about your journal is like, I see it as like a sacred space. Like it's a safe, sacred space just for you. Because one of the things people too that are like, okay, I'm afraid to write it down because what if someone reads it? It's like, if someone reads it, like if you're worried about that, write the pages, rip them out, throw them away. Like you don't need to reread them. Here is one of my biggest things. You can definitely ask a really great way to journal is to ask questions to yourself. My biggest thing that I want to say is, and the biggest mistake I see people making with journaling is they don't end on a positive note. It's like opening up this wound, right? Like, especially if you're working through something, you're opening up, you're excavating everything, you're bringing it to the surface, and then you're just walking away from it. So the closing of it is going to be really important. So you've just unpacked, like, I'm really frustrated, or I'm in fear, or I'm not crazy about using the words positive and negative because they're so highly charged either way. But for this instance, I'm going to use the word negative, but like where you're sharing a not so positive, negative experience that you're trying to work through, to end it with, well, how do I want to feel here instead? How do I want to feel about this instead? And that automatically, as you begin to write that, your brain again sees in pictures and images. So it begins to feel that feeling. So it begins to call that energy and that experience forward right away. Our brain is designed to want to make us right. So whatever stories or beliefs or ideas that we have, our brain, in order to keep us alive, to survive, is designed to make us right. So it's automatically beginning to collect information. So it is constantly collecting information to validate our experience. This is why it's so important to know what's going on inside your mind from that really loving, curious place. And so the moment you start to write, okay, well, I want to feel more connected to my body. I want to trust in my body's ability to become pregnant. I want to trust that the pain and the flare-ups are going to get less, and I'm going to feel more comfortable, more pain-free in my body. You begin to automatically experience that as you write it. So that's the thing. Just make sure to end on a positive note. But you can do, the other thing that we look at is like gratitude journaling, which I think gratitude journaling is really great. And I did that for a long time too. If you're going to do gratitude journaling, I also invite you to do like deeper gratitude, like not just, okay, I'm so grateful that I had a really beautiful meal with my family tonight, but really going like, okay, how can we find gratitude in maybe the things that didn't go well? How can we find gratitude in the things that are coming? Oh my gosh, I'm so grateful for the beautiful life that's unfolding before me. I'm so grateful that my body has been responding to all of the things that I've been doing to support it. So this multidimensional gratitude, I feel, is really great as well. But that introspective place, or even that brain dumping, I think is my favorite ways to journal.
And are there any times that you recommend in the day to journal?
I definitely recommend, whenever you're your best and you have your least distractions. I love to journal in the morning because I'm fresh. I love the ritual of my coffee. I love my ritual with my coffee and my journal, and just feel like I'm just starting the day, because it's also allowing you to set your intention for the day. Like, right when we get up in the morning, it's like those first couple of thoughts, those first, whatever happens in those first couple moments, those first 20 minutes, maybe it's like, it can really set the intention for your day. So if you're saying, today I really want to be in a place of gratitude. I really want to be in a place where I'm looking for the good in my life. I really want to be in my body today. You're setting that intention rather than getting up and going, okay, all the things I have to do today, like you're off and running, just allows you that moment to pause. But if you don't really like to do it in the morning and you want to do it in the evening, that's great too. I find it is a little bit more difficult to drop deeper into it if you're already in that overly active brain wave space in the middle of the day. Now, with all of that said, if you have something that you can't shake, that you're just spinning in your mind over and over and over again, putting pen to paper at any time of the day is going to be beneficial rather than just waiting like, okay, I'm going to journal about that tomorrow.
Yeah. That's really helpful. And I know as part of my training, I learned about morning pages. In the first 20 minutes, your mind is the most open because you've come from that sort of dream state. You're still quite lucid, aren't you? And open to tapping into what's in there rather than being sort of closed off and in the day and focused and sort of in a more controlled mind state.
Yes. And it's also the same with the visualization. Like first thing in the morning is also a really great time to do it, or right before you go to bed when things are kind of calming down, because your mind is actually more open to your subconscious mind is more open to receiving it, rather than, again, when those active brain waves, like when we're in our active brainwave state, it's like, it's hard for this, it's hard to penetrate that wall or that amount of energy and movement. So, and think of it like as the ritual of it. If you're trying to force yourself to do it because you think you have to do it, and this is another piece of advice that I give my clients all the time, is that if you're just doing things to check things off the list, but you don't feel invested in them, you don't feel connected to it, it could just be taking energy that you could put somewhere else. It's counterproductive. So if you're going to journal, like look at it from that curious place again, to be like, okay, what can I explore? What's going to, I'm always so curious around like, okay, what am I going to process? What's going to come up that I don't even realize is there in this beautiful excavation process? But looking at it as not something that you have to do, but something that you get to do, something that you want to do. Otherwise, you're just kind of going through the motions, and it's not necessarily going to have the impact that you want it to have. And I find that that's what we're doing so often when we're trying to heal something. It's like we're trying to throw everything at it, and we're just going through the motions. We don't really feel connected to it. So definitely with your mental, emotional, and spiritual practices, the more connected to it, the more you kind of are creating that space for it, the more beneficial it's definitely going to be. And it's going to work so much more for you.
Thank you. And I completely agree with that. Definitely. Definitely agree. I'm not going to add anything to it. I just, before we start to wrap up things, I just wanted to say your analogy earlier about the flying in the sky, in the sea and everything under it. I think that's very powerful. That's very powerful of what can be under there that needs investigating. So yeah, just wanted to say thank you.
Well, and I have the saying like where it's like, we know what we know, what we know, what we know, right? And there's so much noise in our minds, and the fear can be so loud sometimes. And I like to say that our intuition or our soul's knowing, it's subtle. It's not going to scream at us like our fear. Like we can sometimes get lost. Like we think that the fear is actually our intuition. It's not. Our intuition, our bodies speak to us in subtle ways. And of course that subtleness will get louder, which can, as we talked about, manifest in different physical issues. But in your heart, as we both of us have spoken about, say that feeling of just knowing that you would be a mom or knowing that you'll become pregnant. And there can be all these things in the outside world that can make you feel like maybe that's not going to happen, but there's that part of you that knows. And so the more we can connect and be in our body and work on building that muscle that knows, the easier our lives and our journeys and healing becomes, because we're not so focused on the outside world and all the things they're telling us are or are not possible or what we should or shouldn't do. We want to be guided by that internal compass that I believe has the answers to everything that we need to heal our bodies, everything, not that we won't need outside things, but the more we're tuned into that part of us that knows, we're going to get the direction to the best doctor to go to. Is surgery necessary? Is surgery not necessary? Is this supplement actually going to be best for me? Or is there something within me that says maybe this isn't the route to go? Is the mental and emotional piece something that I need to be doing? Is it meditation? Is it visualization? Is it yoga? Is it Reiki? Is it journaling? It's like we're trying to throw everything at it, but when we're tuned into that sweet spot within us, that internal compass, that's when we know that the things that we're doing are going to have the greatest impact, because we feel, again, that connection to us. But we want to build that knowing muscle. And so the questions that you have about what are or are not possible, I believe within that internal landscape, you already know. It's, will you trust it enough? Will you feel safe enough in it to take action forward through it?
Thank you. That was very powerful. Now, I want to know, are there any resources or things that you want to share or highlight that people should refer to that will help them, with this internal work?
Absolutely. So I have a free resource on my website, which is also a great place to start if you with my free fertility affirmations, if your fertility journey is something that you are focused on. Affirmations is another one of my favorite tools that we didn't speak about today. We did a little bit around the affirmation or around the journaling, but like with affirmations, that when we, again, our mind, we have those repetitious thoughts. So when we have an affirmation or a mantra that we can begin to repeat in our heads over and over again, not just like a broken record, but like the feeling behind the words, I believe it can also cultivate deep transformation within our lives. So I have a free fertility affirmations download that a lot of people absolutely love. And then also on my website, I've got my course, Journal Yourself Fertile. I've got a ton of fertility courses on there from pretty much anything you can imagine from a mind, body place. So all of my work includes powerful workshops, and then there's a visualization component, and there's also a journaling component to all of them. Because again, I want to support you in the multidimensional piece, to give you the strategy, to give you the steps to take, but also to do that deeper work at the same time, because I feel like that's how you make rapid transformation and healing in your life, is through treating yourself as the multidimensional, amazing, beautiful woman that you are.
Yeah. And I totally agree with that. And having used a couple of courses, I would totally rate them. Talking about affirmations, actually, because we didn't talk about it, I would say that they are fantastic. And during my sort of first fertility journey, I think I can't remember now. I think I created some of my own. And then I've created them with pictures and stuck them all around the house. I stuck them on the mirror. So when I was doing my teeth or doing my makeup, on the back, back of the front door when you're going out. And it just really helps, because it's almost like your subconscious was taking them in without necessarily sitting there and reading through them. And that was a real help. So yeah, download your affirmation cards and then maybe put them somewhere where you can see them all the time.
Yes. And that's at mollynichols.com. And yeah, the really amazing thing. So the other little thing that you can do is like, and we didn't talk about Spirit Baby today, but like little things that remind you of your baby. Also, you can put the little affirmation by that, like little things around your house that because we're in that subconscious thought pattern all the time, right? We're only consciously thinking when we're consciously thinking. The subconscious is running the majority of the time. So we can have those little things around our house that interrupt it and go, oh yeah. And I think we have this idea too, that we need to be sitting in meditation for hours and hours a day, or we need to be reciting our affirmations hours and hours a day, or we need to be, journaling for all this time. And the more that we're doing, the more impactful it's going to be. It's like, if you're just doing a little bit, like start with 5 minutes of just breathing with a hand over your heart and a hand over your womb. Just stop and, even 5 minutes of journaling or a little bit goes a long way. Cause think right now, like if you're not doing any of that, it's like the little bit. And I think you said this earlier, like we're looking for that huge thing that's going to change everything. And a lot of times the other analogy I like to use is like, it's one little candle at a time that's leading us down the path. One little celebration, one little moment of like, I'm really proud of myself today because I took those 5 minutes. Like rapid transformation can happen through small moments throughout your day. So don't think like, I think when we have this conversation a lot of times, and if you're new to visualization or new to journaling or affirmations or this mind body work, we think it's going to take all this time. Just those little moments, a couple of deep breaths. Like I have an exercise where I invite my clients just to set a timer on your phone. It's called the 3 and 3, 3 deep breaths 3 times a day. And all you do, place a hand over your heart, hand over your womb, and you just stop 3 times a day. You take those couple of deep breaths, you connect with your womb, you connect with your baby, and you're on your way. And then when we're holding our breath all the time and we're in that anxious place, so often you're giving yourself that moment to connect with yourself and your baby. And when you're not doing that any other time and you haven't been doing that, you begin to feel the change.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think it's better to do a little bit every day.
Yes.
Than it is to do 5 minutes every day than it is to do, half an hour once a week.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think so too. Or thinking or trying so hard. This is also where like our perfectionism gets in, where you're just like, okay, well, I didn't do it today, so I'm just never going to do it again. Or like you have to build up to this time that you're going to start. And so even with me with journaling, I journaled nonstop for probably like 2 years. But then right at the end of getting ready to birth Tallulah, recently I couldn't journal. It was like I couldn't go inward. I had to be like in the physicality of my body. It was like like she wouldn't let me go deeper. And I like to be in the ethers around journaling and all that sort of stuff. And so I didn't journal for a couple months, but it was like I picked it right back up. So sometimes it's even the buildup of like that you're going to do it. Put your journal next to your bed. Put your visualizations on your phone, like what makes it easier. But like, if you don't do it perfectly for like a week or like a couple weeks, you can always stick your head, like just start whenever you're ready to start. Sometimes it's that buildup that you got to do it perfect or every single day.
Yeah.
And if you can't, you're just not going to do it at all.
Yeah.
So don't do that.
Yes. I'm also of that mindset. That's a sabotage mindset where it's like, if I'm not going to do it perfectly, I'm not going to do it at all. So yeah.
Well, and I say that in my courses all the time too. It's not about being perfect. You don't need to start over. Just keep going. Keep going, So, cause it's like so many of my clients will be like, well, I haven't done this and I need to do it all and I need to do it perfectly. It's like, again, those little wins, little celebrations.
Definitely. And now I know that we could probably talk all afternoon, but you're a busy woman. So why did you want to inspire and help other women?
Oh, it's such a good question. One thing that's come through so strong, especially over this past year, that's just been amplified, is I really want women to know how incredibly magical they are. Like, again, we're born with that life portal within our bodies. Like we have a creation space within our bodies. And I want women to remember the magic of who they are, that there's so many different stories around what's right, what's wrong, what's pretty, what's not pretty, what's needing to be perfect, all these things. And just going, you're absolutely perfect as you are. You have everything you need within you. And when we can remember that, when we can trust in that, all the things that we're working so hard for, we become the magnet for them. They just begin to show up where we don't have to work so hard because we have just the capacity that we hold within our bodies is incredible. And that even if we've been given a diagnosis and even if we're struggling, that our bodies are not broken, we are not broken. It's just part of our experience in this life that we're moving through. And when we can still feel whole, we can still feel and be tapped into that magnificence, that divinity within us, life just becomes easier. And I really want women to support women in remembering that, because that's been transformational in my life in that remembrance as well.
Thank you, Molly. Finally, a question I always ask is, if the women listening to this episode today and they could take away one thing from you, what would that be?
Oh, such a good question too. The one thing I would say, make your mental and emotional well-being a priority. Like really take a pause in life, slow down, tune within, begin to explore that internal landscape, begin to explore what's going on within your body, and know that your body is your dearest, dearest friend. She's with you every single day of your life. Your body's the only thing that's with you every single day of your life. It's with you, and she's in communication with you, and she loves you, and she has so much to share with you. And if you can slow down and be with what's going on within you, you're going to start to, clear everything away. And again, that internal landscape that is going to come forward is going to blow your mind, and it's going to change your life in ways that you can't imagine. And yeah, sometimes it's super uncomfortable, and sometimes you have to be really honest with yourself, and sometimes change has to happen. But in the end, you're going to look back even a week from today, or 2 months from now, or 2 years from now, and go, oh my gosh, I'm not even the same person, because I know who I am. And all that story around, again, what's good, bad, right or wrong, or who you need to be or who you should be, that will fall to the wayside, and you're going to be who you were born to be.
Thank you. That was great advice. Thank you so much. Now, I know you've already asked this, but in case you've got anything else, where can women find and connect with you?
Yes. So I'm at mollynichols.com. And then I'm also on Instagram at Molly Ann Nichols. So MollyAnnNichols. So there's 3 N's.
I was about to say there was 3 then, wasn't there?
Yes, 3 N's. Yes. So that's where you can grab the affirmations, any of my courses and programs. And then I'm always creating community and sharing all sorts of goodness over on Instagram. That's my one social media platform that I use.
Excellent. Thank you, Molly, for coming on the show. You have been amazing. I knew you would be. I'm really honored that you could make it. And I know that all the listeners will have a huge amount to take away. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored that you had me on. And yeah, I just really appreciate you allowing me this time to connect with your audience and you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode and have some useful tips and actions you can take away and put into practice. This podcast is to add to your knowledge so you can delve into the whys behind your endo and fertility struggles and move forward with thriving and conceiving. It is not meant to replace your current medical advice. If you loved listening, then make sure to subscribe to get the latest episodes. It would be amazing if you could take a minute to leave a review, as it will help in reaching more women who might benefit. Even better, if you know someone who would love to listen to this episode, then please share. If you want to find out more about who I am and what I do, you can follow me on Facebook and Instagram. I also have a private Facebook group, Thrive and Conceive with Endometriosis, where I share all sorts of nutrition and health nuggets. My website, endofertilityspecialist.com, provides you with lots of information, including my Endofertility 1-to-1 health coaching program. Lastly, don't forget to sign up to my Endofertility Inner Circle to receive weekly news. The links are all in the show notes. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I hope to see you next week for another episode.